Elijah Carter woke up before dawn, his small studio bathed in the faint glow of streetlights filtering through the cracked blinds. The neighborhood was quiet, save for the occasional hum of a passing car. His studio, no larger than a storage room, was cluttered with canvases, paint-splattered drop cloths, and the unmistakable aroma of turpentine. Each corner of the room was a testament to his relentless pursuit of his dream, to leave his mark on the art world. Elijah wasn't just any artist. His work carried the soul of the streets, the struggles of his upbringing, and the love of his late grandmother, who had always encouraged his creativity. From vibrant murals that captured the vibrancy of his community to abstract pieces that conveyed the silent pain of oppression, Elijah's art was deeply personal. Yet, despite his undeniable talent, he struggled to break into the mainstream art world. He spent his days creating and his nights scrolling through social media, watching gallery after gallery showcase works by artists with less passion but more connections. The disparity stung, but it also fueled him. Each rejection letter he received from galleries became another layer of paint on his journey, a reminder that he would someday prove them all wrong. Childhood and inspiration. Elijah's journey began in the heart of the city, where skyscrapers loomed over graffiti-covered alleys that told stories no museum ever would. His grandmother, Miss Lila, had raised him single-handedly after his mother's passing. Miss Lila was no artist herself, but she had a profound appreciation for beauty. She often took Elijah on walks around the city, pointing out murals, mosaics, and even the beauty in cracked sidewalks filled with weeds. "Elijah," she'd say, her voice warm and melodic, "art is everywhere if you know how to see it. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Her encouragement planted the seeds of his passion. She gave him his first sketchbook, a battered thing she found at a thrift store, and filled it with love, telling him, "This is your world, baby. Fill it with what you feel." Miss Lila passed away when Elijah was only 16, leaving him with a profound sense of loss and an unshakable determination to honor her legacy. Her wisdom became his guiding light, her memory etched into every brushstroke he made. The dream of recognition. Years later, Elijah found himself hunched over a canvas, his hands stained with hues of cobalt and crimson. He had poured his last few dollars into this piece, a sprawling abstract work that juxtaposed vibrant, hopeful colors with dark, chaotic swirls. It was a visual representation of his journey, his struggles, and his dreams. This was the painting he would take to Montgomery Fine Arts, a prestigious gallery downtown known for launching the careers of elite artists. The gallery was Elijah's white whale. He had spent months preparing for this moment, perfecting his portfolio and rehearsing his pitch in front of the mirror. His friends in the neighborhood cheered him on, their belief in his talent unwavering. His best friend Marcus had said, grinning, "You're about to show those rich folks what real art looks like." Elijah smiled at the memory as he carefully wrapped his painting, ensuring it was protected for the journey. He donned his best shirt, an old button-up that still fit well enough, and headed out, his nerves a mix of excitement and dread. The visit to Montgomery Fine Arts. Montgomery Fine Arts was everything Elijah expected it to be, imposing, elegant, and utterly intimidating. The exterior was sleek, with massive glass windows showcasing sculptures and paintings that screamed wealth. Inside, the air was cool and tinged with the faint scent of polished wood. Wealthy patrons strolled leisurely, their conversations punctuated by the clink of champagne glasses. Elijah felt out of place, but kept his head high. He approached the reception desk, where a young woman with a practiced smile greeted him. "May I help you?" she asked, her tone polite but distant. "I'm here to see Mr. Montgomery," Elijah said, his voice steady. "I'd like to show him my work." Her smile faltered, replaced by a look of skepticism. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but—" "Mr. Montgomery is very busy," she interrupted, her tone now dismissive. "He doesn't usually take unscheduled visits." Before Elijah could respond, a man in a tailored suit approached. Gerald Montgomery, the gallery's owner, exuded an air of authority. His silver hair and sharp features gave him the appearance of someone used to being in control. "What's going on here?" Gerald asked, his tone sharp. The receptionist hesitated. This gentleman wanted to show you his artwork, but he doesn't have an appointment. Gerald's piercing gaze landed on Elijah, scanning him from head to toe. Elijah felt the weight of that look, the judgment it carried. Still, he held up his painting with determination. I'm Elijah Carter, he said, his voice unwavering. I believe my work would be a good fit for your gallery. Gerald arched an eyebrow and let out a short, derisive laugh. Really? Let's see what you've got. Elijah unwrapped the painting, revealing the vibrant masterpiece he had poured his soul into. For a moment, there was silence. Then Gerald's lips curled into a smirk. Well, it's colorful, he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. But we cater to a more refined clientele. This, street art wouldn't appeal to them. Elijah's heart sank, but he managed to keep his composure. It's more than just street art, he said, his voice firm. It's a reflection of real emotions, real experiences. Gerald chuckled, shaking his head. Look, kid, I'm sure you worked hard on this, but it's not the kind of thing we showcase here. Maybe try one of those community centers. They might appreciate it. The words hit Elijah like a punch to the gut. He could feel the eyes of other patrons and staff on him, some amused, others pitying. He quickly wrapped his painting, the sting of rejection and humiliation burning in his chest. The emotional aftermath. Back in his studio, Elijah sat in silence, staring at the canvas that had once been a source of pride but now felt like a symbol of failure. Gerald's words echoed in his mind, threatening to drown out the encouragement his grandmother had given him years ago. For a moment, he considered giving up. What was the point if the gatekeepers of the art world refused to see his value? But then he remembered Miss Lila's voice, steady and reassuring. Art is everywhere if you know how to see it. Elijah realized that Gerald's opinion wasn't the final word on his worth as an artist. He had been painting long before he sought validation from galleries, and he would continue painting long after. With renewed determination, Elijah picked up his brush and began working on a new piece. This time, the strokes were bolder, the colors even more vibrant. It was his way of defying the doubts that threatened to consume him. He vowed to prove Gerald wrong, not out of spite, but to show the world that art born from authenticity could transcend prejudice and elitism. As the sun rose over the city, Elijah's studio glowed with the colors of his defiance, hope, and unyielding passion. This was only the beginning. The morning after Elijah Carter's fateful encounter with Gerald Montgomery, he sat in his small studio, staring at a half-finished canvas. The previous day's rejection still lingered like a dark cloud, but Elijah had channeled his frustration into his art. His latest piece was raw and visceral, a swirling mix of bold, jagged strokes in deep blues and fiery oranges. It was an emotional outcry, a visual manifestation of his struggle to be seen in a world that refused to look. Across town, in a cramped coffee shop frequented by artists and creatives, Jenna Reyes, a local art blogger, was scrolling through her inbox. Jenna was known for her knack for discovering hidden talent, often championing artists who were overlooked by mainstream galleries. Her blog, The Canvas Underground, had gained a modest following, attracting readers who craved authenticity in a world of manufactured aesthetics. That day, Jenna received an email from Marcus, Elijah's best friend. The message was brief but heartfelt. You've got to see my boy Elijah Carter's work. He's pouring his soul into these pieces, and the world needs to know about him. Attached were a few photos of Elijah's paintings and a short description of his story. Jenna clicked on the first image, and her breath caught in her throat. The piece was unlike anything she had seen, raw, emotional, and deeply resonant. She quickly scrolled through the others, each one telling a story of pain, resilience, and hope. Intrigued, she decided to dig deeper into Elijah's background. The more she learned about his journey, the more convinced she became that his work deserved a spotlight. The blogger spotlight. Jenna published a feature on Elijah that evening, titled The Streets Have a Story, Meet Elijah Carter, the artist the world needs to know. In her post, she described his work as a fusion of raw emotion and untamed creativity, comparing his style to a modern-day Basquiat with a voice uniquely his own. She shared photos of his paintings alongside snippets of his story, how he grew up inspired by his grandmother, how he transformed his struggles into art, and how he was dismissed by a prestigious gallery. Elijah Carter, she wrote, is a hidden gem waiting to shine. The blog post gained traction overnight. Social media users began sharing it with captions like, "Have you seen this? Incredible, and this is what real art looks like." By morning, the post had gone viral, with thousands of comments and messages pouring in, praising Elijah's work and demanding to know where they could see more. The birth of a viral sensation. Unaware of the storm brewing online, Elijah spent his morning in his studio, working on another piece. When Marcus burst through the door, phone in hand, Elijah looked up in confusion. "Bro, you're famous," Marcus exclaimed, grinning ear to ear. "What are you talking about?" Elijah asked, setting his brush down. Marcus handed him the phone, showing him the blog post and the countless comments. Elijah scrolled through the feed, his eyes widening in disbelief. Strangers from all over the world were praising his work, calling him a genius, a visionary. Some even asked where they could buy his paintings. Elijah's heart raced. For years, he had poured his soul into his art, wondering if anyone would ever notice. And now, people were noticing. But along with the excitement came doubt. Would these people truly value his work, or were they just caught up in the hype? Marcus, sensing his friend's hesitation, clapped him on the back. "This is your moment, man. Ride the wave." The art collector's discovery. Among the thousands of people captivated by Elijah's work was Vivian St. Clair, a renowned art collector known for her discerning taste and a keen eye for talent. Vivian had built her reputation by discovering artists long before they became household names. She had stumbled upon Jenna's blog post while researching up-and-coming talent and was immediately intrigued by Elijah's story. Vivian studied each photo of Elijah's paintings carefully, marveling at the emotional depth they conveyed. But what struck her most was the authenticity behind his work. It wasn't polished or pretentious, it was real. She decided she had to own one of his pieces. Using her network, Vivian tracked down Elijah's contact information and reached out to him through an anonymous buyer. Elijah, still overwhelmed by the sudden influx of interest, agreed to sell one of his paintings under the condition that it remain anonymous. He signed the piece simply as E. Carter, a choice that allowed him to remain grounded and focused on his art. The auction house and the $1 million sale. The painting eventually made its way to Hollingsworth Auction House, a prestigious venue known for showcasing works from both emerging and established artists. Listed under the name E. Carter, the piece was described as a masterful blend of raw emotion and contemporary abstraction. The art world was abuzz with speculation. Who was this mysterious E. Carter? Critics praised the painting, calling it a revolutionary piece that challenged traditional norms. Bidding wars erupted, and the piece eventually sold for $2.3 million, a staggering sum that sent shockwaves through the industry. Back in his studio, Elijah was blissfully unaware of the frenzy surrounding his work. He had chosen to focus on creating, pouring his energy into a new series of paintings that explored themes of identity, loss, and hope. He wasn't chasing fame or fortune, he simply wanted to tell his story through his art. The unseen fame. As weeks passed, Elijah's name, albeit under the pseudonym E. Carter, became a sensation in the art world. Critics hailed him as a visionary, galleries clamored to acquire his pieces, and collectors competed to own a part of his legacy. Yet, Elijah remained detached from it all, preferring the solitude of his studio over the chaos of the spotlight. One evening, as he worked on a new canvas, his phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. "Yo, you seen this?" Marcus wrote, attaching a link to an article about the auction. The headline read, "E. Carter's masterpiece sells for $2.3 million, who is the artist behind the name?" Elijah stared at the screen in disbelief. He had sold the painting for a modest price to the anonymous buyer, never imagining it would fetch such an astronomical sum. For a moment, he felt a pang of frustration. Was this success truly his, or was it tied to the mystery of his anonymity? But then he remembered his grandmother's words, "Art is everywhere if you know how to see it." She had always believed in his talent, and now, the world was beginning to see it too. The quiet triumph. Though he remained anonymous to the public, Elijah found solace in the knowledge that his work was finally being appreciated. He continued to create, driven not by fame or wealth, but by the stories he wanted to tell. And while the world debated the identity of E. Carter, Elijah stayed true to himself, quietly shaping a legacy that would soon change his life forever. The sun filtered through the smudged windows of Elijah Carter's studio, casting warm streaks of light across the room. His workspace, though modest, was alive with creativity. Canvases leaned against every wall, their vibrant colors telling stories of hope, struggle, and resilience. Elijah sat cross-legged on the floor, lost in his process, when a soft knock at the door pulled him out of his focus. Marcus, his ever-supportive best friend, poked his head in. "You expecting someone?" he asked, stepping aside to reveal a well-dressed woman with an air of quiet confidence. Her presence filled the room, not with intimidation, but with an aura of command. "Good afternoon," the woman said, extending her hand. "I'm Vivian St. Clair." Elijah froze for a moment. He had heard of her, everyone in the art world had. She was a titan, a collector whose name alone could elevate an artist to international fame. He wiped his hands on his paint-stained jeans and shook hers hesitantly. How did you find me?" Elijah stammered, his mind racing. Vivian smiled warmly. "Let's just say your work has a way of making itself known. I've been following the buzz around E. Carter, and after a little digging, I discovered you're the artist behind the name." The revelation. Vivian gestured to one of the chairs in the corner of the studio. "May I?" she asked, sitting down without waiting for an answer. Elijah stood awkwardly, unsure of what to say. Marcus excused himself with a grin, mouthing, "You got this." "Elijah," Vivian began, her tone measured, "do you know what's been happening with your art?" He shook his head, still bewildered by her presence. "I've heard some things. Marcus showed me the auction article, but I didn't think much of it." Vivian leaned forward, her eyes piercing yet kind. "Your painting sold for $2.3 million. Do you understand what that means?" Elijah's jaw tightened. He had sold the painting for a fraction of that amount, never expecting it to explode in value. "I didn't even know it was at an auction," he admitted. "That's what I'm here to talk about," Vivian said. "Your work is extraordinary, Elijah. But the art world is complicated, to say the least. Without guidance, it's easy for artists to be exploited or undervalued." Elijah sat down across from her, his hands clasped tightly together. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I see something special in you," she said without hesitation. "Your story, your perspective, your talent, it's rare. I want to help you navigate this world, to ensure your art gets the respect and value it deserves." Bittersweet success. Over the next few weeks, Vivian became a mentor to Elijah, guiding him through the labyrinth of the elite art market. She introduced him to agents, collectors, and critics, teaching him how to protect his work and negotiate deals that reflected its worth. Elijah quickly realized that the art world wasn't just about talent, it was about strategy, connections, and presentation. But as Elijah's star began to rise, he couldn't shake the bitterness he felt about his past rejections. For years, he had struggled to be seen, dismissed by gatekeepers like Gerald Montgomery, who had belittled his work without a second thought. Now, those same gatekeepers were scrambling to acquire pieces by E. Carter, unaware of the irony. Vivian noticed his internal conflict one evening during a gallery event. "You're holding on to something," she said, her voice gentle, but probing. Elijah hesitated before answering. "It's just, all of this feels strange. These people didn't care about me or my work before. Now they're lining up, because I have a name. It's hard to forget the way I was treated." Vivian nodded. "That's a valid feeling. But remember, success is the best revenge. You have the power now, Elijah. Use it wisely." The irony of fate. One day, as Elijah reviewed offers for his latest pieces, an email caught his eye. It was from Montgomery Fine Arts. Gerald Montgomery himself was inquiring about purchasing a painting by E. Carter for his gallery. Elijah stared at the screen, his emotions swirling. The man who had mocked him, who had dismissed his art as street work, was now eager to showcase it. He could almost hear Gerald's voice from that day: "This street art wouldn't appeal to our clientele." He showed the email to Vivian, who raised an eyebrow. "Now that's poetic justice," she remarked. "What do you want to do?" Elijah thought for a moment, a slow smile spreading across his face. "I'll sell him the piece," he said. "But on my terms." The plan. Elijah carefully selected one of his most powerful works for Montgomery Fine Arts, a large, striking canvas that blended bold colors with intricate textures. It was a piece that spoke of struggle, triumph, and self-discovery. He sold it under his pseudonym, ensuring Gerald would remain unaware of the artist's true identity. But Elijah wasn't finished. He wanted more than a quiet victory. He wanted to confront the hypocrisy of those who had once looked down on him. With Vivian's support, he began organizing a private event at Montgomery Fine Arts, where he would reveal his identity as E. Carter. The confrontation. The gallery was abuzz on the night of the event. Critics, collectors, and art enthusiasts gathered to celebrate the unveiling of E. Carter's latest masterpiece. Gerald Montgomery was in high spirits, proud to host the mysterious artist whose work had taken the art world by storm. As the crowd mingled, Elijah entered the gallery, dressed sharply in a tailored suit, a far cry from the young man Gerald had dismissed months earlier. Gerald approached him, unaware of who he was. "Welcome," Gerald said, extending a hand. "I hope you're enjoying the event." Elijah shook his hand, suppressing a smile. "Oh, I'm enjoying it more than you know." When the time came for the unveiling, Gerald took the stage to address the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are honored to present the work of E. Carter, an artist whose talent has captivated the world." Elijah stepped forward, his heart pounding but his expression calm. "Thank you, Mr. Montgomery," he said, taking the microphone. "And thank you all for being here tonight. My name is Elijah Carter. I am E. Carter." The room fell silent, stunned by the revelation. Gerald's face turned pale as he realized who Elijah was. "I've been here before," Elijah continued, his voice steady. "Months ago, I brought my work to this very gallery, hoping to be seen. But I was told my art had no value. That it didn't appeal to refined tastes." A murmur rippled through the crowd as Elijah turned to Gerald. "And now, here we are. My work is in your gallery, not because of your belief in me, but because the world decided it was worth something. I hope this serves as a reminder to never underestimate someone based on where they come from or how they look." A turning point. The audience erupted into applause, their admiration for Elijah evident. Gerald, visibly shaken, attempted to congratulate him, but Elijah maintained his composure, keeping the interaction brief and professional. That night, Elijah left Montgomery Fine Arts not as a struggling artist, but as a celebrated force in the art world. He had turned the tables on those who doubted him, proving that his worth was undeniable. In the car ride home, Vivian smiled at him. "You handled that beautifully." Elijah nodded, gazing out the window at the city lights. "I didn't do it for him," he said quietly. "I did it for every artist who's ever been told they're not enough. This is just the beginning." The grand reopening of Montgomery Fine Arts was an affair befitting the elite echelons of the art world. The gallery had been meticulously curated for the event, showcasing pieces from some of the most prominent names in contemporary art, including the enigmatic E. Carter. It was an evening that promised exclusivity, refinement, and, most importantly, profit. As the crowd gathered, Gerald Montgomery paced the gallery floor, ensuring everything was in order. His tailored suit and polished demeanor masked the quiet desperation that had gripped him in recent months. The art world was shifting, and traditionalists like him were struggling to keep up. The arrival of E. Carter's work in his gallery had been a lifeline, a way to restore prestige and relevance to his name. The return of Elijah Carter. Outside the gallery, Elijah Carter stepped out of a sleek black car, flanked by Vivian St. Clair, a handful of prominent art critics, and a cadre of collectors eager to support his work. Elijah was dressed sharply, exuding the quiet confidence of a man who had weathered storms and emerged stronger. The chatter inside the gallery hushed as Elijah entered, his presence commanding attention. Whispers spread through the crowd like wildfire. Many recognized him as the rising star behind the celebrated pseudonym E. Carter, but a select few also recalled his name from the blog post that had sparked his meteoric rise. Gerald, noticing the sudden shift in energy, turned to see what had captured everyone's attention. His eyes landed on Elijah, and for a moment, his composed facade faltered. The young artist he had dismissed so casually months ago was now walking through his gallery as a celebrated figure. "Elijah," Gerald said, forcing a smile as he approached. "Welcome. It's an honor to have you here." Elijah extended his hand, meeting Gerald's gaze with a steady intensity. "Thank you for having me, Mr. Montgomery. It's good to see the gallery thriving." Gerald's smile tightened. He was well aware of the power dynamic that had shifted since their last encounter, and the weight of his earlier dismissal hung heavy in the air. The public unveiling. As the evening progressed, the highlight of the event approached, the unveiling of E. Carter's centerpiece, the painting that had sold for millions and catapulted the artist to fame. Guests gathered in anticipation, eager to hear from the elusive artist. Gerald took the stage first, addressing the crowd with his practiced charm. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight. We are privileged to showcase the work of E. Carter, whose art has captured the imagination of collectors and critics alike. This piece, in particular, is a testament to his extraordinary talent." With a flourish, he unveiled the painting, a stunning composition of bold colors and intricate textures that seemed to pulse with emotion. The crowd erupted into applause, captivated by the piece's raw beauty. Gerald gestured toward Elijah. "And now, I'd like to introduce the artist himself, E. Carter." Elijah stepped forward, the applause growing louder as he took the microphone. He paused for a moment, letting the room settle, before speaking. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he began, his voice calm and steady. "It's an incredible honor to share my work with you. But before I talk about this painting, I want to share a story." The room grew silent as Elijah recounted his first visit to Montgomery Fine Arts. He described the excitement he had felt, the rejection he had faced, and the words that had been spoken to him. "I was told my work had no value," he said, his gaze fixed on Gerald. "That it wasn't refined enough for this gallery." A ripple of discomfort spread through the audience as they realized the weight of his words. Gerald shifted uncomfortably, his polished demeanor beginning to crack. "But life has a way of coming full circle," Elijah continued. "Because that same painting, the one dismissed so easily, now hangs here as a centerpiece. And tonight, I stand before you not as a struggling artist seeking validation, but as someone who knows the value of his work." The art community's rallying cry. The room erupted into applause. Paved the way for others to follow. It was, indeed, poetic justice. The gallery at 23rd and Montrose had always been a place of exclusivity, its glass facade reflecting the towering skyline of a city that often ignored its most vibrant voices. But on this crisp autumn evening, the once intimidating Montgomery Fine Arts was unrecognizable. Now named the Lila Carter Gallery, in honor of Elijah's late grandmother, the space buzzed with an energy it had never known, a celebration of diversity, creativity, and resilience. Elijah Carter, the new owner of the gallery, stood near the entrance, greeting guests with a warmth that contrasted sharply with the cold elitism that had defined the space under its previous ownership. His tailored suit reflected his success, but his demeanor remained humble, his smile genuine. This was more than a triumph for him, it was a reclamation of a space that had once symbolized rejection. Transforming the gallery. The transformation of the gallery was a labor of love. Gone were the stark white walls that once showcased a narrow definition of art. In their place was a vibrant mosaic of colors and textures, each piece telling a unique story. Elijah had personally curated the opening exhibit, featuring works from young, underrepresented artists he had discovered through his travels and online platforms. The gallery was divided into thematic sections. One corner celebrated street art, a nod to the murals that had inspired Elijah in his youth. Another featured abstract pieces that explored themes of identity, resilience, and community. A central installation, a massive sculpture created by a young artist from Elijah's old neighborhood, served as the heart of the exhibit. As the doors opened for the grand reopening, the gallery filled with people from all walks of life. There were seasoned collectors, critics, and journalists, but also families, students, and local artists who had never set foot in a space like this. The atmosphere was electric, a testament to Elijah's vision of inclusivity. Celebrating the community. Elijah's opening speech was short but powerful. Standing beneath a portrait of his grandmother, he addressed the crowd with gratitude and purpose. "This gallery isn't just about art," he began, his voice steady. "It's about the stories behind it. It's about giving a platform to voices that have been overlooked for too long. My grandmother, Lila Carter, always told me that art is everywhere if you know how to see it. Tonight, I hope you see the beauty in every corner of this space, in every artist who shares their truth." The crowd erupted into applause as Elijah stepped down, his heart swelling with pride. He mingled with the guests, stopping to chat with the young artists whose work was on display. Many of them looked at him with awe, thanking him for giving them an opportunity they had only dreamed of. Gerald's attempt at reconciliation. As the evening progressed, Elijah spotted Gerald Montgomery lingering near the edges of the crowd. Gerald's once confident posture was now subdued, his expression unreadable. He approached Elijah cautiously, a glass of champagne in hand. "Elijah," Gerald began, his tone tentative. "I wanted to congratulate you. The gallery looks incredible. You've done something truly remarkable here." Elijah regarded him for a moment, his face unreadable. "Thank you, Mr. Montgomery. I appreciate that." Gerald hesitated, then added, "I'd like to think I played a small part in this, even if indirectly. Perhaps we could collaborate in the future." Elijah's smile was polite but distant. "I think we have very different visions of what art should represent. But you're welcome to visit anytime. Maybe you'll see something new." It was a graceful dismissal, a subtle but firm boundary. Elijah harbored no ill will, but he also had no interest in rekindling ties with someone who had once dismissed him so easily. His focus was on the future, not the past. Honoring his grandmother's legacy. Later that night, after the guests had gone and the gallery was quiet, Elijah stood alone in front of the portrait of his grandmother. It was a simple but striking piece, capturing her warm smile and the quiet strength that had carried her through life. "I hope I've made you proud, Grandma," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Everything I do is because of you." He closed his eyes, letting the memories wash over him. Her laughter, her wisdom, the way she had always believed in him, even when the world hadn't. This gallery was as much hers as it was his, a testament to her unwavering faith in his dreams. Mentoring the next generation. In the weeks that followed, Elijah threw himself into his new role as a mentor. The Lila Carter Gallery became a hub for emerging artists, offering workshops, mentorship programs, and residencies. Elijah personally reviewed submissions, often selecting pieces that spoke to him on a personal level. He took a special interest in mentoring young artists from marginalized communities, sharing his story and encouraging them to embrace their unique perspectives. "Your voice matters," he would tell them. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." One of his ments, a shy teenager named Amara, reminded Elijah of himself. Her paintings were bold and expressive, but she struggled with confidence. Over time, under Elijah's guidance, Amara began to embrace her talent. Her work eventually became a centerpiece in one of the gallery's exhibitions, drawing praise from critics and collectors alike. The legacy of perseverance. As the Lila Carter Gallery continued to thrive, Elijah reflected on his journey. He thought about the rejection, the pain, and the self-doubt that had once threatened to consume him. But he also thought about the resilience it had forged within him, the lessons he had learned along the way.